Okay, welcome to the studio. We're going to paint a marsh bird, and we're going to begin with the background space first, so it has a lot of colors back there. We're going to use a 3/4 inch nylon brush to fill in our backspace with. It's big, and so we can just pick up color and go with it. So that's what I'm going to start with first. We're going to think about a way that we can put brighter colors over here on this right hand side, and maybe the darker colors over here. So I'm just going to start. I'm going to load my brush with white and a little of the cerulean blue, and that color will just come right out against that yellow and green color that we are going to build in next. I'm going to add yellow into the cerulean blue, and then that can be a fun green color just to come right out in that area of the weeds and the marsh grasses that start coming. But we want to get the blues and the white sky set up, so that'll be in this area primarily. So I'm using just the big brush, and I'm just using a big wide stroke to make those brush strokes, and that really adds some character to the painting because we think about this being an outside space, and that will help us get that idea of that area. So just adding more brush strokes, more paint, more overlapping. I'm going to add more of the yellows as I come down and around on this side of the bird. So I'm taking the cad yellow and the yellow ochre, and in some places you can tell I am really going brighter, and then in some places I'm going to go a little bit on the duller side, or if you look at it like this, we're thinking about even browns now coming in as we get painting towards the grassy area. I'm going to go ahead and come in between the bird's legs to make sure that I have that area taken care of as I start back this direction. So you can see a greenish color coming in. We've got a lot of greens coming in this area that are really bright. So I'm going to add more yellow to those. I'm not worried too much about grassy marks right now. I'm just doing an overlapping kind of foliage, or the foliage, so that it looks like that it's really far away. I can use the brush in a lot of different ways, which is great. On the width of it, you can see how I can fill in all of that space. But then as I need grassy things, I can certainly add those in by just using the length of the brush. So that'll be real easy to do too. Let's add the yellow and blue together to get some green that we can put in there. And we'll use that pretty much all the way around so that you can get the feel of the bird just being surrounded by greenery. So we'll do more greenery over here on this side. We'll make some of these strokes a little bit longer to look like they're taller for the background. And now I'm just going to continue on around the back side of our white bird and add color in here so that the white bird will really stand out against that deep darker color. So I want to give it the idea of it being a little bit of a sky area, so I can add the blues in to that area too. So we have some sky mixed in with some bushiness, and then our painting just flows with one brush stroke, just pulling everything together. yellow ochre that I was using a while ago, and adding the burnt sienna to it right in this area will certainly make the white bird stand out. So I'm gonna use the edge of the brush to push that up against his body. But I really like the way that the yellow is making its way through this area, so I'm gonna make sure that I don't cover up too much of that. I think the greens are important, so I'm going to add some green back in here too, so I can make sure that I have it blended out through out the whole area that we're using as our background space. So now I have a little green, a little blue. Remember, you can overlap over your field just a little bit so that when you get ready to paint it, it doesn't look like that you've painted around it. So I'm going to wash out my brush now and get it ready to reload. I'm just going to tap it off with a paper towel to keep most of the water out. And I want to brighten a few places so that the sun really feels bright. So to do that, I'm going to take the cerulean blue, add some white to it, and I'm just going to come in here and make some brush strokes that just literally sort of dance across the painting. It's not like I'm going across and just painting a big blue sky. I'm just letting the blue come in and peep right through those marsh grasses. So that is the goal, and I think we're accomplishing that by putting that bright blue in, just like that with a brush, just using it very wispy so that the colors literally just dance along. And then I want to make sure that it looks grassy enough. I want the bright green grasses to show, so I'm going to mix some yellow and blue together, and I'm going to come in and make a little bit more of a grassy line or form that shows the line of the grass. So now we can begin to build that a little bit more in the painting. And in doing this, I'm just using the edge of the brush to make lines if I want a line. And then I just turn it a little bit more on its side or lay it down if I wanted it to be thicker. So now I'm building, you can see grass in the front area, but still working very quickly and working in a way that I'm not trying to be too detailed. And that way I can get a fun look that goes all throughout my background. The way that I started having the blue peek through the grasses. So now that I have a ground set up, I'm thinking that I want to come in and make this area a little brighter. So I'm going to go back to my yellow. I'm going to come back in with a little white and a little yellow ochre, so I can make that just as important as the sun peeping through. I have the green and yellow grasses now, and so it really gives that bird a place to be that shows his habitat in a great way. Okay, so now let's add those colors into the water just a little bit so that they can be reflected down in there before we actually get the blues and greens going. just using the brush literally just to lay down the water reflections in. Okay, now I will come back in and I will use a light blue. So I'm going to take white and the ultramarine blue, and I'm also going to use the cerulean blue, and you can see how I'm going to begin to put these strokes of water in. So I'm laying some color down. This is almost a gray that I'm starting with. We'll get brighter and brighter as we go. Okay. Okay, so after I add the grayish blues up underneath, I'm going to start with some brighter blues. We have an aqua blue that's really going to bring out the color in the water. And with that, you can see I'm using just a full brush stroke and pulling the color in and around where the birds' feet are in this area. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to take a bright blue, which is, in this case, it's a cobalt blue, and we're going to add some of that along the edge. And then we will add cerulean blue. So we really can have a lot of fun playing with the different blues that we can see in the water of this picture. And now I'm going to use the brush almost just to blend the water a little bit so that the colors come together. Using the full width of this 3/4 brush, in addition to just laying the colors on and using, every time I go over, I pick up a different blue. So sometimes it's cobalt, and sometimes it's cerulean, and sometimes it's aqua. Right now I'm just laying a framework because I want to be able to have all of these colors coming out so that we can really see them. And of course, because we've got all the yellows and greens up above, we have to have that in the water too. So we want to make sure that we get those colors in. So I'm going to take some of the greens that we have here, and I'm going to pull them down here and do the same here. So that way we get a feel of it being reflective, coming right in the same place. So I'm going to do the same thing with the golds that are in the painting in this area. I'm going to have these colors coming down in this area, and I'm using the same stroke up above as I am below so that you can get literally a mirror image of what I have above it. Remember, we used a lot of gold and yellow up here, so I'm going to use those colors now more down in the water so you can see those. And as I come in and go around where the bird's feet are, I make sure that his legs are covered up in that area. So with white now that I've added to my brush, I'm going to make the water look like it's really moving in this area, because you can tell he's moving. So if the bird's moving, the water's got to be moving a little bit. So that's why I'm moving the water. And because I had the color on there, if I just take the brush with some white on it, I can literally just move it by taking the brush and make the water pattern move in a different direction than what the grass was when I was painting it. So now I'm going to wash the brush, and we're going to put more of the brown grasses in. We have a lot of the yellows and the greens. So now we're going to add brown into that so we can push those back in the distance a little more. So I have sap green added into that too, into the brown. And that works for setting up the space that we want to show. And then we'll get a little bit more along our bank in this area. I'm not going to put too much detail. It's just a fun, colorful picture of the white bird being in the water. But remember, anytime I put something above, I also have to put it down below. So I'm adding in a little bit of that color now. But this nylon brush allows you to really push the colors together. But if you use the right pressure, then you can move the paint, but you're not mixing it so much that you make mud. You just let the colors lay there. You just barely touch the canvas to make that happen. So now I would like to wash out the dark color, and right in the center where we're sort of emphasizing the light coming in, I would like to lighten up that area. So we'll add a little bit of a lighter green. We'll make the aqua and the middle green. It's called a medium green or a brilliant green, depending on which brand you buy. But I'm going to use both of those and add just a little bit of white to brighten it, and put that right in the middle across where the water meets the grasses. And then of course I have to do it on the water and the bushy side. So now I have this green that's almost glowing. It's really bright coming out from that area, which is nice. And I've just carried that color all the way through. And now I'm adding more in the water. So I'm able to carry that through all the space. And so now we're ready for a bird. So I'm going to start with, if you think about the shape that the bird has, that's all taken care of in the drawing. But what we want to do is make sure to be able to see the form. We want to be able to make sure that we put the darker colors, the shades in there, so we won't have him look flat. We don't want the flatness. So I'm just going to pick up some white on my brush and begin to put the white in. But as I'm doing it, I'm going to add the colors from my palette to make it go a little grayish blue. And that way the underpainting grows and develops with the same colors that are in the painting already. And then the areas, I'm just lightly putting it over where the lines are that show me his muscle tone. And so where those muscles are, now I'm going to go in with a bluer color and actually add color so that you can see it. And you can tell where the wings are accented, where you can see the layers in. And so I just put white and then added the blue right on top of it. And then it was mixed in with some other grays and greens that were on my brush. So that's the basis of setting up his form. Now underneath where we have that little overlap, I'm going to go in and get like a purple and brown, mix that together and make the gray a little bit darker. And then that way I can make sure that when the wing is being when it's overlapped on this side, that you can actually see that, because I'm using a darker color. It's a gray, so it's real natural to his body color. Now, something I want to do is I want to make sure that that neck and that tail have those colors that are behind it put in. So just without changing anything on my brush, I'm just going to go in and pick up a little bit of the yellows and greens that I see coming through, and that way I'll know where that space is, and then I'll be able to work around it to make sure that the bird is in front of it. So once I put that in as I'm painting the underpainting, then it's real easy when I put those top feathers on that I can still see them. So with those colors now, I'm going to come on in, add a little bit of white to my brush, and then add that color to his head. So it's a white, but it has a lot of different colors mixed in with it from the palette. And that, of course, is the background color. So I have some yellows and greens and browns mixed in, and that gives it a gray color. And then that way I can build his feathers right on top of that. So I'll do that next. So I'm going to wash out the brush and just pat it dry and put it aside so that I can get a smaller brush. And this is a number 2 flat brush. I'm going to dip it in the water first. It is flat, and the bristles are long enough so that I can still sculpt these wings that I want to put on him. So now I can start making a little bit more of a line if I want the wings to have that kind of identification. So I can just pick blue up every once in a while and browns and greens and just come in and just literally lay the feathers on with one little stroke at a time to make him look like he is fluffy, and of course we want that. And then the lines that you have drawn in on the picture that you're getting from your kit actually show these lines that I'm putting in. I can see them right up underneath my white paint, so I know that they're there. And then when I get ready to put the acrylic white paint on the bird, then all those feathers will really show up. So I'm going to do that now. I'm just wiping off the brush just enough so that I can pick up the white paint and let it lay down where I want it to go. So just picking up the white paint, I can come in, and if I want to do it with a little more paint than I've been painting with, if I want it to be a little bit thicker, I can add the paint on pretty thick and just push it and make it fall in a line, and you can see how easy it is to create those feathers just by a contrast between the dark lines that I put in first and now the feather color that I'm adding on the top. So watch the shape of the bird that we developed with the lines that you had in the drawing. You can see which way the feathers go, and you can tell which direction. You can always refer to your inspiration photograph that you have in your package to help show you where these feathers are going and what direction they're going. And you can see that feather comes from here and goes around. So I'm just repeating those over and over and over again until I get the light white color to show up against the blues and browns and beiges and all those other colors that I put in first in the drawing and then in the painting. So now I can move up, and you can see that this area is lighter in the center, and we've got a fluffy chested bird here. So I'm adding more white, just laying it on and fluffing it up. And I continue to the top, and I do the same thing. And now he really looks like that he's fluffy because all the colors that are up underneath really stand out and give him depth. And you can see all of that now that the white is on. Now for his feet, we can use the darker colors. We can use the burnt umber and the burnt sienna. And even even if you want to put a little orange in it or yellow ochre, I think if you stay in that family though, literally if you just take your brush and you're going to put it down as if you were going to use just the tip of the brush, and then you can turn it a little bit so it makes it just a little bit thicker and easier for you just to apply the paint. But this is brown, and I'm even adding some sap green in it so that it gets a little bit darker on one side of the leg, like on this right side, so that way he looks like that he is actually standing in the water, and that you can see the roundness of his leg. You'll actually round out if you put that dark on one side and then put the lighter brown on the other side. And remember, he is in the water, so that's why we did the brush strokes a while ago in a round way so that he can actually stand in the water. And we could have a little reflection down in the water where you just put a little bit of the same color right down below where the water's coming together around his leg. And if you needed to bring out the leg a little bit more, if you put a light right down the center of it, you could see that it really has a roundness now with the dark and the medium and the light all being put in a very small space, a very simple line. If we needed to, we could go a little bit darker, like right up underneath the wing where it's almost casting a shadow probably on his leg. So I'm actually adding the alizarin red and the sap green together. That makes a beautiful black that's really dark enough for us to see that it is a cast shadow in that space. And then we know that we're ready for his beak. And so to get ready for that, we're going to use another brush. So I'm going to wash this one out and dry it off and put it aside so that we can get another brush. This is a round brush, and we can use that to actually draw just a real thin shape for where we want his bill to be. Now this is sort of a really a neutral color. It has a little yellow and maybe orange in it, and then a lot of white. But we want that to show up against this background space. So what we can do is we can make it a little bit lighter here. And remember, you've got your lines that are going to tell you exactly what you're painting. So once you put one little brush stroke of color right across it, it really shapes up the top, and then we'll make the bottom a little bit darker. So with the yellow and the orange, I'm going to add a little brown, and then we'll come right across the bottom. And you can see, if you'll just hold your brush really tight right up against the part of the brush that's holding the handle to the bristle, if you'll use that part, if you'll choke up on your brush, you can get as much detail as you need. It always helps to dip your brush in the medium that you're using. In this case, with acrylic, we're using water. That way your paint really flows, and you can get exactly, you can paint exactly what you want to. You can get a fine little line that just goes all the way across. And then by the time you get through, you've got the point on the end that you need. Now, it gets a little bit darker in between the beaks, of course, where the two touch together. So I'm making black again. I'm using the dark ultramarine blue and sap green and the alizarin red. It makes a beautiful black. So I'm going to use that on the tip of my brush just to go in just ever so slightly to hit and to show where the top and bottom beak come together. And then I'm ready for the eye. And so we know that this is going to be set up with a color and then a pupil or a black in the middle. And then we've got black around the outside, so it's sort of like a donut space. So I'm just going to take like a yellow and an orange and put that in the space that represents the eye, and that'll get it set up. So that's the center part, just really filled in with a yellow ochre with some yellow in it. And then I can take my brush, wash it, tap it dry just a little bit, and then I can dip it in the black that I made. And that black I can go in right now and put his pupil right in the center. You can see the black. And then I can take and do a tiny little line all the way around. It doesn't even have to be all the way around it, but just enough to show that it's an edge, because they do. So this completes our marsh bird painting today.